Om. Om Sahanā-Vavatu Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. For all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Okay, so last 2 days we've been discussing this, and we've explored the physical body and the astral body, the subtle body. And we've made some correlation between waking state experience, which is experienced through the instrument of the physical body, which the I experiences through the physical body, and the dream state experience, which the I experiences through the subtle body, the mental activity. And we've differentiated. We can see that in waking state, we're interacting and acting, primarily action, through the gross organs of action and participating through the gross sense organs. Yeah? And then, yes, you're smiling, we're coming back there. We'll come back in a little bit of a different approach today. And then the subtle body, all mental. The field is all mental. There's a little more discussion here that's helpful in terms of the subtle body, because we were discussing concept yesterday where our attachment or our identification during waking state is really with the physical body. So we're experiencing life as if I were this physical body, except that really the experiencer, in a way, is so we can say ultimately the I, but the real activity is in the mind, in the emotions, in the subtle body. And so a little more discussion of that this morning. Beautiful from Shankara by way of Swami Prabhavananda. He says, the subtle body is like a sharp tool in the hands of a carpenter. It is the instrument of the whole activity of the Atman, which itself is infinite wisdom. Therefore, the Atman itself is free from any taint. So first he says that really it's the inner instrument that's at work in both the waking state and the dream state. And he continues, he says the conditions of blindness, and by the way, we can see that. We were talking yesterday about pleasure and pain, and the reality of pleasure and pain. It was a good discussion, a great question, thank you. Pleasure and pain exists within the subtle body. The experience of pleasure and pain and the judgment of pleasure and pain, this is pleasurable and that's painful, etc., is all within the subtle body. This is part of the discussion. As is north, south, east, west, hot, cold. Right. Also, you can't give it any existence beyond the mind. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little about Maya this morning, and we'll see science's view on this same statement. It's hard to say that hot or cold actually has a reality beyond the experience that we have of it. Certainly it's hard to say that time has any reality beyond the experience that we have of it. And where is the experience conducted? It's conducted in the subtle body. Does that make sense? It's not we talked yesterday, the physical body, when the life force, which is part of the subtle body, has left it, it's just cold meat on a slab. The physical body. So the physical body itself is inert. It's being propped up and motivated, and whatever intelligence is here is really belonging to the subtle body. And so, instrument in the hands of a carpenter. And then he goes on, he says, the conditions of blindness, weakness, and keen vision belong to the eye. They're caused by its qualities and defects. In the same way, Deafness and dumbness are conditions of the ear and tongue, but not of the Atman, the knower. Inhalation, exhalation. So he says these conditions that we speak of, just for clarity, belong to the bodies, physical body and subtle body, not to the I. And we can see that. The meditator is unaffected by it.
Right.
Yeah. So, not to the Atman, the knower, or the experiencer, or awareness. Inhalation, exhalation, yawning, sneezing, the discharge of saliva, and the leaving of the body at death are said by those who know to be the various functions of the vital force, which is also the subtle body. Right? Hunger and thirst also are functions of the vital force. Hunger, physical hunger and thirst seems to be within the body, but also the vital force. But not the I, not the experiencer. And again, the meditator knows this. Yes? You ever experience hunger in the state of meditation? Ever once? Anyone? When you're really in the state of meditation, where is that hunger? So it only belongs to the body, right? And where specifically? The subtle body.
Right.
We say the physical body's hungry, but again, that on the slab, that physical body is not hungry. Just to differentiate. People say my body's hungry. Okay, we're not talking about the physical body, just understand. So which body is hunger in? Subtle body. It's not in the meditator, right? And it's not in the physical body. And that's proved after the life force has withdrawn from the physical body. Yeah, no hunger there. And it was never hungry.
Right.
But here the question, which we didn't state again at the first, the question that we're dealing with now is what is the not I or non-Atman, and what is the I or Atman, and how to differentiate or discern between the two. So how to find myself in the field, real self, capital S self. And so I'm unaffected by hunger. I don't get hungry. That's unique to the subtle body specifically. And here he says the vital forces. The mental organ identifies itself with the organs of perception and action, as well as with the physical body. Where is this identification with the physical body? It's in the mental organ. Does that resonate? No, it's not in the meditator. Okay. So it's not in the I, it's not in the self. It's in the body. Which body? Not the physical body. The attachment to the physical body and identification with the physical body does not exist in the physical body. It exists in the mind, in the mental sheath. So we can say ego. Ego, of course, is an aspect of mind. So mental organ identifies itself with the organs of perception and of action. And where is the saying, I'm doing this? Well, really, that is in the mental organ as well. Delusion we discuss more as a part of Maya. Why do I take myself to be this? What we're focusing on now is that I'm not this. Yes? The question, why do I take myself to be this, is a different question. It's related to Maya. That's what I'm saying. Okay. And we're coming there. But first know that I'm not this, and experientially recognize I'm not this. I'm not this physical body, and I'm not the astral subtle body, either one. He who believes himself to be acting or experiencing is known as the ego. And we'll come back to this very shortly. The individual man. So where does the individual man exist? Individual man doesn't have existence beyond ego. We'll just put that out there. Beyond the ego sense, which is playing through both the subtle and physical bodies, which is influencing the I, which somehow is telling a story that I'm separate through feelings and emotions and like this. He who believes himself to be acting or experiencing is known as the ego, the individual man. Identifying himself with the gunas, he experiences the three states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep or dreamless sleep. When the objects of experience are pleasant, he is happy. When they're unpleasant, he's unhappy. So who's happy and who's unhappy? Here, Shankara is saying that's the ego, the quote-unquote individual man. The ego itself, as it were, is happy or unhappy. Again, is the meditator affected by a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience? No. So you see that? Okay. Meditator is bliss regardless, correct? Very good. So it's not the meditator. In other words, it's not the real self that's affected and that's happy or not happy, correct? Okay, it's important to see. So that's also beyond the field, isn't it? Okay. So who's happy then? So Shankara says it's the ego that's happy. And who's unhappy when the painful stuff happens? He says it's the ego that's unhappy. Interesting, right? It seems to exist somewhere, and we could say in the mind, but where? So he would say ego. Pleasure and pain are characteristics of the individual, not the Atman, which is forever blissful. And you confirm that through your experience of meditation.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So the object of experience is lovable, not for itself, but because it serves the Atman. But the Atman itself is to be loved above all else. The Atman is forever blissful. For it, there can never be any suffering. So he says something here which we can take a moment with. He says the object itself, the object which is being experienced, the tree, the rose, the murti, the wind, the stars, the sun, the hara, whatever the object is, it's lovable. Yes, potentially so. Every single object, potentially so, lovable. It's the lovableness, as it were, however, is a quality of the Atman, of the I, of the capital S self. And it itself is the bliss. And so it is to be loved above all else, not exclusively on the inside, we have to say. Because it's inside everything and everyone is in it. So it is to be discovered in its totality and loved. Okay, now we come to deep sleep. And here's the way deep sleep is normally. Here, we're going to take just a moment now, and we'll come back to it before we close this series. The causal body. We'll take just a moment with it now, because the causal body is quite mysterious. The causal body, why causal? Because it's said to be the cause of rebirth. And maybe we can even touch on that this morning. And what is it made of? Well, there's one sheath affiliated with the causal body, which is the Anandamaya kosha. Ananda, of course, meaning bliss. So the sheath made of bliss, the covering over the Atman made of bliss, or the I. Again, we had a visual perhaps of layers of clothing, so this would be the sheerest, the most subtle In a way, approximating the bliss of self, in a way, and therefore easily confused, but still a covering. And what is it made of? What is it constructed of? We didn't write that here, didn't fit that little bitty circle. So the physical body is made of the gross aspect of the 5 elements, as it were. The subtle body is made of the subtle aspect of the 5 elements. And we've explored both of these over the last couple of days. What is the material cause, as it were, of the causal body? The material cause of the causal body is said to be avidya, ignorance. That's it. That's the material it's made of. It's made of ignorance. Very difficult to grasp that. But that's what's shared, and we'll do our best over the next couple of days. We'll come back to that concept again. This is aligned with waking state. So in waking state, we experience the apparent outside world. The I experiences the apparent outside world through the gross body. In dream state, the I experiences the apparent world, which in waking state we see only existed in the mind. We experience that in the subtle body. So the subtle body is said to be the cloak at that point. What we're wearing the subtle body, which is the mental and vital force body. Okay, and then dream state. It's said that the experience of the deep sleep state, dreamless sleep, is the avidya, ignorance, or the causal body alone. And so what is the causal body made of? Again, ignorance, but also the sheath is the bliss sheath. So here's what will typically be given in terms of trying to relate to this. It will be said that in deep sleep, one experiences the bliss of self, the bliss of the Atman, but still veiled by ego or avidya in a dormant state. We'll see that phraseology in this work, and we'll see it in others. That the I is experiencing the absence of mental activity. The absence of mental activity. The absence of I-ness, and this is a good point that we'll come back to, the absence of I-ness and mindness, which is very much on display in waking state and less so in dream state, I-ness and mindness. So experiencing the absence of that. And how do you know? This point is made. This point is always made that you're experiencing the bliss of self, but since the mental activity is, as it were, shut off, and since the I-ness and mindness is dormant or absent, then you have no memory of the deep sleep state, right? You don't remember it. If someone says, did you experience bliss during deep sleep? If you think back, you say, I don't know. I don't know, because I don't know anything about the deep sleep, right? I don't know anything about deep sleep. Okay. And then what's said is, well, but look at that moment where you're coming out of deep sleep and see if in that moment you're aware of having experienced bliss. In other words, did it feel good? And some people will say, yes, I'm aware of that. And some will say, no, I'm not. So we'll set that here. Here's a different way to look at it. And that is the ego. And the ego is the sense of I-ness and mindness. Here's the other thing that's said in the Upanishads about the 3 states, waking state, dream state, deep sleep state, and the ego sense. It said that the ego sense, which is the I-ness and mine-ness and the feeling of separation. I-ness, mine-ness meaning self-aware, but aware of myself as something. Yes? Whether it's this body, the dream body, whatever it is, aware of myself as something. That's the I-ness and mine-ness. And the feeling of separation, of course, as I as opposed to you. In the dreams even, that I as opposed to you is there, as opposed to you. You're in my dream. You were in my dream last night. People tell me a lot, you were in my dream last night. That means I appeared in the dream as an other to them. Yes? Okay. Even though it's all in my mind. So I-ness and mine-ness was there. So this is said about this I-ness, mine-ness, or ego, that in the waking state, it is full. Ego is in its full capacity, or the fullness of ego, the fullness of the ego expression. In the dream state, it's half. And in the deep sleep state, it's dormant, or a zero. And we'll explain this and see if we can catch it. So, waking state, physical world, and we were discussing this the other day in Mandukya Upanishad. Here is the field of doing. So in this field, my experience seems to be all about doing, having done, wanting to do, and becoming something. So it's the state of activity or fullness of activity, waking state. And the sense of I-ness is on full display on the inside. We see it, right? I need to do this. I didn't do that. Yes? I did this. Somebody says, did you wash the dishes? I did it. You missed a spot. I did not. It's on full display, yeah? Alert, active, the I-ness and mine-ness. How do you see it? Because of the strength of I-ness and mine-ness. Yeah, it's like no break whatsoever from it. So it's in a state of full assertion or full manifestation. In dream state, it's said to be half manifested. Meaning, I'm still aware of otherness in the dream. We just said, I appear in people's dreams and right as an other. So otherness is still there. But the whole thing about becoming and doing is far less prevalent in the dream state, right? And we, as I said, we had some discussion a week ago, and beautiful discussion in Mandukya Upanishad. A couple of you, I think, joined us. But even absent that, can you catch it? I'm just asking the question, can you catch it? You can comment on this. Can you catch that in the dream state, the dream experience, I am still identified with a body. Now, if you can check, you can even look and see if it's the same body that you're identified with in waking state. Because often we'll find out it's not. Often in dreams, it's a childhood body, or, my God, sometimes I'll share one of my very interesting dreams was I was Wesley Snipes playing a bad guy in a movie. And so, but I was identified with the dream body, which existed in the mind, which was a whole different color and shape and all of that than the body that ego asserts is me in waking state. So we've got that, which is interesting. The I-ness is still there, but check in and see if that strong urge to become something is there, or the strong feeling of having to do something when one is in the dream. Is it there? We think you'll see that this will help to get at this idea that the ego sensation is half manifested in dream. The dream seems to be more about experiencing, even though I'm experiencing as a separate person. And then it's said in deep sleep that it's unmanifested, that the I-ness and mine-ness or ego is unmanifested, which in one way we can see, because in deep sleep there's no I-ness or mine-ness. Is that correct?
That's what they say, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't have any experience of I-ness and mine-ness, correct? In deep sleep.
I don't have any experience of deep sleep, so...
Yeah. That's what you say. That's the ego saying that, because the ego is unmanifest during that time.
Right.
However, what's happening with the body that you say is mine during waking state? Is the body involved in anything?
No.
When does the body heal itself? What time of the day? When is the healing of the body happening?
Night, yeah.
During
Sleep.
deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that body that you say is mine in waking state, that the ego says is mine and me in waking state, now the ego has nothing to say about it. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
But it's involved in an activity, isn't it? You see it? We call that activity healing. Yeah? What's it healing from? It's healing from I-ness and mine-ness, for God's sakes. Yeah? That's what it's healing from. The body also is getting a break. Is the life force still involved with the body?
Yes.
So you have evidence. The life force is still involved with the body. You can tell it. Yeah? Did I do anything last night while I was in deep sleep? Clearly I did not. Yes? But the body did do something, didn't it?
Right.
Who did it? That healing is a universal force, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Every single created being experiences that same healing, period of growth during deep sleep, during the night, during deep sleep. So who's in charge? I'm not in charge. I know that for sure, yes? Even when waking up, if you look back on it, you say, the body healed. Is there anything saying, I did it last night? I healed myself last night during deep sleep. Does anything say that?
No.
You catch what's being shared? Mm-hmm. So I didn't do it, correct? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? The ego sense is unmanifest.
Right.
But did life carry on?
Yes.
Yes. And now I awaken. And what's my experience as I begin to awaken? My experience is that I-ness and mine-ness is back with me. Mm-hmm. Although it was absent from me during that deep sleep. But how can I say that I was dead during deep sleep? Do I ever say I was dead during deep sleep?
No.
No. But the activity of the body, and there's even there are even brain waves during deep sleep. So somebody will bring that up.
Yeah.
So they'll say, well, the mind wasn't off. No. There's basic fundamental function, but I-ness and mine-ness was off. It was unmanifest. But life carried on as if without me. As if. So it didn't need me. But who's the me saying that?
The ego.
The ego. You see it? That's the only me that can say that. The real I says, I am the life. And I carry on speaking to the ego with you or without you, my dear. I do not need you. Yes?
Yeah.
You're a cipher to me. You're a nothing to me, life says. And in the same way, the I asserts that. And when the I asserts that, it's called self-realization or awakening or turiya. Huh? When you say, but I'm always alive. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
So you can see all the stuff that I thought I was doing from an ego standpoint. I'm just causing disturbance in that state. So much so that the healing has to happen, and it needs a time to happen. Yeah? Okay. Okay, if there are questions about that, we can check. But we're going to continue on just a little bit, Ari.
Okay.
We're going to introduce Maya this morning.
Someone asking, does Shivananda lineage have a dream yoga technique like Tibetan Buddhism?
It's called Yoga Nidra, dear. It's not specific to lineage, but certainly it's within yoga. So Nidra is the Sanskrit word for sleep. So yes, indeed. Our dear Saraswati sent this. The next question that comes, so what we've discussed over the last couple of days, including today, is both the fact that I am not this body and I am not this ego sense. Yeah? You see, the life itself continues, even in the absence of the sensation that I am doing something. And you see the same thing in waking state. So that person who catches that football in the end zone, that diving catch, and you ask them, what did they do? How did they do it? And they say, I don't know. It's a moment, and all of us can touch this. It's a moment of pure awareness. Yeah? Pure awareness. But the absence of I-ness and mine-ness. And so it's the same with music. Truth be told, when we really look at these peak experiences that we have during waking state, what makes them a peak experience is the absence of I-ness and mine-ness in the experience. The I-ness and mine-ness, as it were, puts its print on life and says, you're mine, right here. This is my territory. But in doing so, it, as it were, corrupts it. It tries to take it for its own personal purposes. And so there's a natural disturbance. We call it ashanti, not peace there. But when we're free of the I-ness and mine-ness, then shanti reigns. Yeah? And we all have this. You have the experience because you've meditated, the practice of meditation. You broke through, and now you sit and you experience the meditative state when you sit. Others, we know that state in waking state from this peak experience, whether it's sports or music or writing or reading or riding, whatever it is. I used to get it driving a car, so I can relate to it very easily in that way. And that peak experience is where we enter this state of the absence of I-ness and mine-ness in waking state. And there's no identification with this body. There's no identification with life. There's no print being put on life. Life is observed, it's participated in, and happiness is present. The bliss of self is present. That's a teacher for us too, you see. And so I see, it's not a question of life or death, it's a question of freedom. And what am I wanting to be free of? I'm craving to be free of I-ness and mine-ness. That's it. It's not about the life ending. I'm not really craving to kill myself. I'm craving for the ego death. I'm craving to be free of I-ness and mine-ness. That's all. And that peak experience shows us what the meditative state is. And it shows us that it's not the end of life. It's really the beginning of life, or the flowering of life, or the opening of life. This is why the teachers, Shankara, Swami Shivananda, and the Buddha, Amma, all of these, this is why they share what they share in order to help us to come out of this state of delusion and attachment to these bodies, as if I were this limited being, right? As if I were this subtle body or this physical body. We can say during deep sleep that the physical body, as it were, doesn't cease to exist. Whatever it was before, it still is during deep sleep. Even the subtle body, with the exception of the I-ness and mine-ness, it can be seen, there's brain activity. Yes, there's activity. There's the healing. So is not the life force, which is in that subtle body, is it not conducting unimpeded, just like that diving end zone catch, unimpeded? So if you catch that, you say, well, then of course it's a joyful state. I don't remember it, but I know that it is because I experience it. I experience that state of being free of I-ness and mine-ness. And I know it to be bliss itself. Yes? So maybe you get there. You have to use some inference to get there. But you can see that as long as you're free of I-ness and mine-ness, this life is a joy, yes? Whatever's happening, it's still a joy. Even the I die is related to I-ness and mine-ness alone, because life does not die. Life is eternal. Life is... And what's being shared is, I am that life. And this is the truth of the situation. I am that life. There is a factor asserting that I am limited, but it's false factor, false flag. Oh. Okay, and we'll start the Maya discussion tomorrow morning. The next part of the question is then, the student asks, the difference between the not I and the I. And we've explored this, and Shankara has walked us through it. And if you have questions, anyone who sees, if you have questions about this exploration, just participate in it with us and then ask the questions. I feel it's a pretty complete exploration of what is the not I and what is the I, thanks to Shankara. Yeah? And even how to discern between. And it's pretty good. Yeah. Now, the question, how did this happen? And how to be free, going back to the first question, how to be free of this state of suffering? Because the state of suffering, or the bondage, is the apparent bondage between the I and the not I. Where I take myself to be this, and therefore I take myself to be born and to die, and I take myself to be miserable, and I take myself, and what is that? That's because I'm identifying myself. Well, why am I identifying myself? What is this identification, and how can I be free of that? And that's really where yoga comes. So starting tomorrow morning, we'll discuss Maya. We'll take some of the modern science view. Dear Saraswati shared a lovely article, Scientific American. We'll read a little bit of that, and we'll discuss what Shankara has to say about Maya, and then we'll focus the rest of this series on how to be free of this delusive state. And this is the key. Everybody wants to be happy, and we all think that we need a different experience to be happy. What does it mean to us if we find the capacity to be happy and full in this experience, right where we are? It means the end of victimhood. Yes? Oh, that's a big deal. So this is what the heart of compassion is calling us to. Okay, you checked that one question. No other. Okay, very good. Okay, we'll close for the morning with final prayer and arati. Page 156 in the Kirtan book. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyama Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyama Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyama Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashit Dukhabhak Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mritor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.